Have you ever felt that you as a woman may not appear to measure up when you see incredible women in strong roles? You may be surprised when hearing from women in these positions and how we all share many of the same challenges. Thank you for joining us for the CEO Leading In podcast with Rebecca Jones as we share the journeys of women.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones, your host of CEO Lead In. We are on an exploration together to discover more about the personal journeys of incredible women in both career and life. We all have paths to share that sometimes take incredible turns, deep resilience, and courage to navigate. My hopes are that the challenges shared here encourage women to take leaps of faith and growth when a journey feels too difficult or unachievable. There is great strength deep within each one of us. These stories are meant to share the ways strong women have taken their dreams to strive and thrive to new heights despite their sometimes rocky paths and found a way to lead in. Today, we are here with Krishna Kabra from the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum. She's the CEO, and we're so excited to have her here with us today. Krishna, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Rebecca?
Oh, I'm wonderful. It's another beautiful day here in sunny Southern California. What's not to love, right?
What's not to love?
Yes. So I'm so excited to have you here today. You know, I don't think we've had anyone in this space where you're at. Children's Museum, Discovery, achieving all these dreams for our kids. Tell us how every day looks for you, or one day maybe, because I'm sure every day looks a little different.
Oh, every day looks very different. Well, it's a sort of interesting cocktail of operational stuff that needs to get handled at the museum, which you can imagine in a post-COVID world, you know, we're still navigating even today. And I spent a lot of time raising money for the museum. So we are a nonprofit organization. We're based up in North County, San Diego, but we serve the entire county with our mobile museum. So getting the word out of what we do, advocating for the museum, talking to people who are in our space, who are in adjacent spaces sometimes. So I'm out pounding the pavement a large part of my week usually.
So that's an interesting thing, a mobile museum, which I wasn't aware of. I'm embarrassed to say that. I'm a North County gal also. So tell me, is that something that started during COVID, or was that pre-COVID that you started, thinking about that? And when did you start the actual mobile museum?
So I've only been with the museum for 2 years and some change. Our mobile museum sort of was born in 2015. In many ways, it was way ahead of its time, right? Bringing innovation to early childhood education is critical, and bringing new platforms so that we can reach even more children countywide is also really important. And it's also a part of systemic change that we hope to see across the county with respect to education. So it was born in 2015. During COVID, it shut down for a while, of course, like the rest of the world did. But since we've reopened, it's been in very high demand. And what our mobile museum allows us to do is to visit schools and early education learning centers across the county. So we'll go as far south as the border. And most recently, my education team went up to Bonsall and, Warner Springs and Julian. And it allows us to bring the brilliance of what we do to all the children across the county.
Right. County access. I love it. So let's go back just a little bit. Krishna, as a girl, do you have a story that you could share about your childhood with us that maybe will give our listeners a little bit of insight of who you are?
Goodness me. So I'm not sure about a story, but maybe this sort of reflects into some sort of story. But I obviously have a British accent, and one of the things I really have found to be instrumental in defining who I am as a woman is the fact that I've lived in many different countries, and I've been immersed in various different cultures. So I've lived in East Africa, I've lived in Canada, I've lived in the UK, I'm very well traveled. And I think that exposure, so one of the most I think richest forms of education is travel. And it's, you know, wherever that might be. And you may have the resources to go across the world. You may not have the resources but even the concept of adventuring, right, is something that I relate to and something that I think I loved as a kid. I had the opportunity to live amongst different communities, and I think by osmosis, by immersive experience, you learn so much from the people around you, and that's ultimately what enriches our lives.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Did you know that I still meet kids? And, we're not very far from the ocean. It's about 12 miles. I've actually met kids that have never been to the beach.
That's wild.
It's crazy. And if you think about, San Diego County in itself, we've got the ocean, we have the desert, we have the mountains. I mean, we're really close to everything. But there still is, and back to travel, not even just not going to other countries, but we're talking about just not even going many places within our county. I would love to see that change. It shouldn't be access should not be based on whether you can afford to get there via car or whatever. We've got very, very hardworking parents. And I think in San Diego County itself, you've got, split families like mine was, and, you don't always have that access to get to things. So, with different nonprofits helping our kids get to these different places, I think it's really, really important. So, just thinking about yourself, do you have one word that describes you best?
Oh boy, you really put me on the spot now, Rebecca. Let me think. Oh boy, probably tenacious. Tenacious. I'll go with that. It's not a very sexy word, though, is it? But yeah, for now, let's just go with that. I think, and the reason I say that is, people off, my career has not sort of taken a traditional route. But there is a common red thread. And the common red thread is I love big fat challenges. I just love them. And I've worked in the for-profit world. I worked in the for-profit world for just over 2 decades. Moved to the non-profit, or should I say, for-benefit world. And the common sort of denominator that I've always been attracted to is, what is the challenge here and how can I fix it?
I love it. Well, I have to tell you, tenacity is one of the things I would definitely say about myself as well. And tenacity can help you so much in life. But, the tenacious part of overcoming things is huge. Because really, and a lot of that is really mental, and not everyone knows that, whether it's a physical challenge, whether it's, looking at circumstances and they seem totally insurmountable. I mean, looking at that, how do you get through things? It's really tenacity that gets you through most everything in life.
It is. And it's, accepting the fact that it's not a continuous stream of wins. There's so much failure along the way. And
That's
failure
right.
is such a beautiful thing. The paradox of success is you have to fail to achieve it. And in those failures is the lessons that we must learn. One of the questions that somebody asked me was, what have you learned in all your years of working? And I said, one of the things I've learned is that you have to listen to your heart voice. You have to listen to your intuition. And the reason why being mindful and taking a moment, which we often don't do, is take the moment, is that moment, that space allows us to process. It allows us to process how we're feeling. It allows us to process what we're thinking. But most importantly, it allows us to process our experiences day to day. So taking that space is so important. Every day you got to take the space, right, to I always say, to sort of feed your soul.
Absolutely. And things that seem unsurmountable, a lot of times they're not really. I mean, I really have found that. So, let's talk a little bit about, I loved what you said about failure, that you actually can't have success unless you have had failure. It seems very scary at times when, you fail at something. And a lot of people find that to be something that holds them back. And, a lot of people that I've spoken to over the years, they always say, I failed, but then I learned. Some people don't try again. And so why don't you share a little bit about failure and also how you bring that to a success at the end of the day?
I think so I've worked for I've sort of worked for two startups, and working at the Children's Museum has been an interesting experience of resetting and reimagining who we are. And so there's a lot of startup in my career, right? And I think one of the things about failure is fail fast. So if you're going to fail, that's okay, but just make sure that you fail fast and that you, again, take the time to absorb the learning. And the learning could be from a process perspective, from a people perspective, from a ideological perspective. Like, one of the things oftentimes when we're trying something new that gets in the way is dogma and convention, right? Assumptions that certain things must work a certain way. And I think when you're failing, or assume that there is ironically, there's like no wrong way to fail, right? And failure can take many different forms. But usually, particularly in the nonprofit world, oftentimes there is an assumption that, I'll just give you an example. Like, we don't have the luxury of innovation is oftentimes a mindset, because, we're resource strapped, we're so mission focused, that we don't have the time to do that. I would disagree. I think that in the nonprofit world, we have to innovate. And the reason we have to innovate is because we have to find smarter ways of functioning. So we're actually, because we're resource starved, we're constantly innovating, and we're constantly trying to find more efficient, smarter, efficacious ways of being mission centric. And sometimes we get it wrong, and that's okay, because if we get it wrong, we're learning. So I always say to my team, they're like, what do you think of this idea, Krish? It's kind of new. And I'm like, I don't know, let's try it. Like, what do we have to lose? But if it doesn't work, kill it fast.
Well, and back to that, Krishna, I love what you said really about failing fast, or getting through it pretty quickly. But the truth is, and we found this, I think, more than ever during the pandemic, and that is, you're going to innovate your way into success, and there's no way to stay stagnant. And I we all know that the only thing that is constant in life is change. And if you're not changing, you are not going to survive. And, I think, during the pandemic, there were a lot of companies that just said, gosh, I can't do this open and close thing. We've got to be done. We can't figure it out. And so, then they've had to reinvent themselves. I think that was, something that we really saw. But really, innovation is, and figuring out ways to do things more efficiently, better. I think that's, definitely a constant. So let's talk a little bit about your balancing. I don't know. I feel like many times I feel very balanced with work, and then also just regular everyday life. Sometimes I feel like I'm failing horribly, and with kids and all of that. Tell me, and I know you have two kids, but I'm not quite sure of their ages. Tell us how those the balance looks for you. Do you have any?
There is no balance. I think that's it's so funny you should mention this. I found this wonderful meme yesterday. Balance is total, excuse my French, BS. It's an objective we put on women to achieve, and it's an impossible one. And it is. It's an impossible one. I mean, we all know childcare is arcane in the US, right? There is grossly insufficient amount of resources available for working parents, working moms. And it's criminal, actually, right? We're living in this culture where we're supposed to even life is so unaffordable now, and yet somehow we just have not seemed to find the right solution for how to be supportive of working families. So in my life, I don't strive for balance because I think it's it's a false reality. I think it's almost impossible. But I've gotten better, I think, at carving out quality time with the things that matter. I think something that I said earlier is that you have to feed your soul. And I feel that over the years, I've gotten to appreciate the value of doing that and how that actually serves me when, I am on, so to speak. So I think that when people talk about balance, for what it's worth, like in my opinion, there is no such thing. It's this kind of false reality that we're all shooting for because the world's not structured that way, sadly. But I do think that it's as important to feed yourself as it is to feed those around you. And the more you feed yourself, the more you can enrich other people's lives around you and support them.
Well, absolutely, because then you're mentally healthy and you can give more. I think when I get too tired, I think, oh gosh, I'm failing so much because I really, it's very difficult to find that time. But you know what you do? You have to make that time. You have to figure it out somehow, some way, because then you're far more effective. And I think when you are well rested and you have fed your soul, you can give 1,000 times more than if you are just running on empty all the time. So, yeah, so so kind of switching gears, what do you think one of the most significant barriers are to being a woman that's a leader?
Change. I think the change is coming. We've seen it in the last couple of years. It's not coming fast enough for me, at least. I think that education has a long way to go. Formal education in terms of empowering young girls, giving them an opportunity to explore different identities, like whether that be in the world of STEM or the literacy world or anything like that. And I also think that, I've worked all over Europe, and I spent some time working in Northern Europe, and the way communities are structured out there, and the way organizations allow successful women in leadership to work and be moms is just so radically different to what we know in the United States. The question is, like, where's change going to come from, right? And I think it's for us to advocate for not just ourselves, but for the women who will follow in our footsteps, and to give them a voice and knowledge and a platform for them to ask for what they want. I mean, like, that sounds so like, gosh, it sounds so simple, and yet it's not.
Well, I would say part of that happens to be that we are our own worst critics. And so a fear, and every woman that I've actually spoken to, nearly every woman, has told me that they think the biggest barrier is themselves because they hold themselves back. They don't try things. And, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Trying new things is pivotal in moving forward. You might be exposed to something, you go, yeah, I might have a little bit of interest about that, but you might figure out that you are so passionate about it and you will just excel. And the sky's the limit on when you really care about something and you're very passionate about it. So I think, in changing that mindset, a lot of it has to do, you're right, with us. One thing that I think is really important is internships too, because that is a way for people to try new things, to figure out, is this something I might be interested in? And is it something that I could actually call my own and make a career of? I think I can't even say enough about internships and the exposure that it brings to young people and helping them figure out what they want to do long term. Because let's face it, there are a lot of people that get educated in one field and they end up in something completely different because they realize, shoot, that's just not for me. And, think about if you actually were moving forward and rolling along in your passion, there would be no stopping you and you wouldn't be starting 10 or 15 years in, right?
It's so funny. You make such a wonderful point. I mean, I was reading about this concept called the illusion of continuity. And the illusion of continuity is the belief that we will be what we have been, right? And that, like you and I both know, that's not necessarily the case at all. But what we can do is proactively provide ourselves with opportunities to grow as a constant. Like that should be a constant, is I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm exposing myself to new experiences. I may not love them every time, but I certainly learned something from them. Or I may be like, oh my God, I had no idea. I'll candidly tell you, I had to go to an Iron Maiden concert recently. That is not my genre of music. And I was going in solidarity, supporting a friend of mine whose husband loves Iron Maiden. And I will tell you, we had VIP tickets. It was very comfortable. And I walked away and I thought, gosh, that was actually pretty cool. The lyrics are actually quite good. But that is not an experience that I would have ever thought that I needed a bucket for in my life, right? In my list of bucket experiences. But that's just like a fun example of, I think having an open mind,
that's right,
is so important, right? Like I think that helps us to learn new things all the time.
Well, and two, talking to people that maybe you don't think will bring value to your life. I would argue that no matter the person, no matter their walk of life, their age, or anything, you will walk away with something if you are open to it. And you'll learn something from them. And even it could be learning because you go, oh gosh, I don't like the way the person does this or that. Or it could be, wow, I never really thought about it from that standpoint. And that helped me grow and learn. I really do. I think every discussion is valuable.
All the time. We're hosting a symposium called the STEMposium because, the museum is anchored around early childhood STEM education in December. And we're trying really hard to bring together a diverse set of thought leaders. And one of the people I approached to be a speaker is a professor of applied mathematics at USD. And it's applied mathematics and computer science, I think, is his thing. Amazing guy. Satyan Davidos is his name. And we get into this conversation about what the subject of math is. And ultimately where we end up is like, Krish, math is actually not about the right answer, because I was not a strong math student growing up. And I said, oh, I'm a terrible mathematician. And he said, no, but here's the thing, you're not. And so we talk about math, and he's telling me, well, math is actually not that dissimilar to play, right, for young children. But many people don't think of it that way, right? It's like you got to know your numbers and you've got to know your multiplication tables and you have to get the answer right. And so I think, to your point, Rebecca, it's like you meet people along the way on your journey, and oftentimes you bear witness to new learning and new mindsets that you may not have otherwise have envisioned.
So I'm 55. I tell people that I am going to learn something every single day of my life until the day I die. And I really do believe I will. And that, again, is, talking to all these different people. Didn't you feel like you learned something from him when you had that conversation? See, it's exciting. Life is a journey. It's about people and, talking to them, having conversations and learning lessons. So what are some lessons that you've learned that you'd like young women to apply in their lives?
Listen to your heart voice. Your intuition is probably your biggest strength at that time. You have usually, I have a 15-year-old, and I will tell you, I don't think this is a singular piece of advice that I don't think is going to change, whether she's 15, 25, or 35, is that you have all the answers you need in this moment. It's just a question of paying attention. So use your intuition, like how is something feeling? How is a new experience feeling? And trust that. Oftentimes our head space gets in our way. And something that I talked about earlier is like spend some time in every day in a state of sort of mindfulness, like really thinking or feeling, processing what it is that you need. We oftentimes are so scrambling, particularly in this highly engineered world where we're like overly plugged in to really process where you're at. And then take stock of something that we talked about, which is failure is a path of course. It's not about success, and it's not about perfection. It's about, sounds sort of cliched, but it's so true. It's about the journey and the experience and the lessons learned along the way.
You want to know when you said, process. I love that because, and it's weird what came into my mind actually. So when I was a young woman, 24 years old, I was selling new homes and my partner was 74. And we were working in this very upscale community, and we had a lot of time together where I just had this thirst of knowledge of life. And he loved to just talk. He was a veteran. He had so many wonderful stories. Here we are. It's been a long time. I was 24 and here I am 55. I still remember those conversations and I still process some of the things that we actually had, discussed. And so I think, again, remembering those conversations that impacted you and, processing them. And there might be something that you heard, 40 years ago, 30 years ago that you go, I never really knew what that meant at that moment in time. And here I am, I'm actually processing it again and coming back to a new lesson that I've learned based on life experience. I think that is a huge thing.
I think so too. And, leadership is not something that is, it is taught, right? It's taught in academic institutions, but I think it's something that is through lived experience, right? And it's through osmosis. I've been really fortunate in my career. I've had some amazing, like wonderful bosses, and there is not a week that goes by where, the 2 or 3 of them don't cross my mind. And I'm like, wonder what John would do, and, because there was always, they weren't perfect by any means, but I do think that there is a lot that we learn by the people who inspire us and who lead us. And then you always have your own piece to add to it too, right? To make it your own.
That's right. And you know what? One thing I think too is when talking about failures, when you've worked for a boss that's maybe you think is a terrible boss, I think you learn just as much from them as well. And, a lot of people think, I need to choose this one mentor and this one person who is going to affect me. I would say that everyone in your life, like what I said a little bit earlier, everyone impacts you a little bit. And if you're open to it, you can actually choose your style based on a lot of different people.
That's the beauty of having a diversity of people in your lives is you get to pick and choose what works for you.
Yes, that individuality is huge.
It's
huge.
It is.
Huge.
And there's also your own, right? Your
right.
own sense of who you are. Something that you said earlier is that women often get in their own way. I think that, this idea of losing the perfection is critical. Like, there is no perfect way to be a CEO. There is no perfect way to be a mom. Like, none of that exists. It's just, it's false advertising. It's just so wrong.
It is. It is.
Because it's the greatest obstacle we face.
Well, definitely, because no two situations are exactly the same.
Exactly.
There's too many outside factors that are constantly changing and changing and changing. And, even through the pandemic, I think we've noticed more, oh gosh, that in itself is 100% out. It can never work again because, again, back to the one constant in life, and that is change.
And we don't ever have control of a singular situation, right? Whether you're a parent or leading a large organization, as a CEO, your job is not to control. That is not your job. Your job is to empower and to facilitate and to guide and to bring in new thinking. So again, there cannot be perfection because we don't exclusively have control, and nor should we. That would be really wrong for anybody and unhealthy, not to mention. So we're both on the same page. We agree. And leading
100%. Yes, 100%. And being that leader that says, okay, all these things are happening. We've got a lot of things right. We're going to continue to move forward. We're not going to stay stagnant. We're going to change because change is that constant that, again, all these outside circumstances really do affect people that come and go. It really is a constant change. So that being said, Krishna, what is next for you? What are you going to do next?
As you said the word change, the word metamorphosis sprung into my mind. And I'm really not sure. So the one thing, the illusion of continuity, right? I don't know what's going to come next because for me to assume that I knew would be inaccurate. I would never have imagined that I would be at the helm of a children's museum ever in my lifetime. So I think whatever it is, it will require for me to be tenacious, inevitably, and it will require for me to sink my teeth into a big fat challenge. So I'm not entirely sure what that's going to be.
Well, that being said, I'm sure it'll be something exciting because I love your thought that you love a big challenge, because I think even more now than ever, with the division in our country, a lot of people just not wanting to hear someone else's opinion. We definitely have to work together. And I think you are the right person that will find that big challenge and really make something big out of it.
I hope so. I take a lot of pride. I love mentorship is really special to me. And I think as the older I get, the more I want to be helpful to younger, ambitious, talented individuals who perhaps for whatever reason face barriers in their lives. And I think that it requires a little bit of stewardship and shepherding them. So that is something that I will always look for, in whether that be in for-profit, non-profit, I'm not sure, or even an entirely different world. So that I do make that, I always look for those opportunities where I can, use the phrase "together we rise." And I think that's an important role for particularly successful women to play in society.
Absolutely. Okay, Krishna Kabra, the CEO of San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, thank you so much for joining us today, and we wish you well on all of the wonderful things that you're going to do in the future.
Now that was powerful. We hope you've been lifted and encouraged by today's inspiring voice. Always remember that life doesn't look exactly the same for each one of us. Never stop dreaming, striving, and thriving. In future episodes, we look forward to bringing you powerful stories from amazing women who learned how to lead in to challenges. Thank you for listening and being part of our community with CEO host Rebecca Jones.